Hi, I'm Jody Emerson, and I'm the Director of Public Policy and Community Relations with Fierce Freedom. Fierce Freedom is a nonprofit that's based in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, that works to raise awareness and educate the public about human trafficking. And we really focus on domestic human trafficking because as we got into looking at fighting human trafficking, a lot of people realized that human trafficking is happening in Africa and Eastern Europe and Thailand and other parts of Asia. But they really didn't think about it happening within our own borders. And if they did think of it happening within our own borders, they often thought of it as being an immigrant problem. Really, when we look at domestic human trafficking, it really is a crime of exploitation. It's people selling other people for their own personal gain, and it can be labor trafficking. In Wisconsin here, we see that in the agricultural industries and dairy farms and farms, restaurants, nail salons, things like that. But we also see a lot of sex trafficking here. And that was a really hard thing to get across to people because rural Wisconsin wants to think that we're really innocent. They don't see people walking up and down a road trying to sell their bodies like on Pretty Woman or some other movies like that. So if they don't see it, it doesn't happen. Most of the human trafficking, the sex trafficking that we have in our area starts on websites. It's Backpage, it's Craigslist, it's dating websites sometimes. And so it really doesn't happen out in the open. You really need to know what to look for in order to see it. As part of our programs that we do, we like to raise awareness. We like to educate the public. We like to point out warning signs, and we like to do this in groups where they can make a difference. So we talk to school-age kids, parents. We talk to parents about internet safety and how to keep their kids safe because they're trying to teach their kids something that they had no experience with as children themselves, so they don't really know how to deal with it. But then we also look at professional development, and one of the big programs that we've started this year is a campaign called the Be Aware campaign. And this is a partnership with the Eau Claire Police Department, Visit Eau Claire, which is our Convention and Visitors Bureau, and Fierce Freedom. And what we're doing is we're highlighting problems within the hotel industry. Eau Claire is a city where there's been a lot of revitalization downtown, and a couple of the hotels a few years ago that were downtown were really bad situations. There was a lot of prostitution and drug dealing and things like that going on in the hotels, and they were bought up by people who wanted to make a difference in our community. So they gutted the hotels, they hired new staff. It's a completely different atmosphere, and we really thought about how can we get a completely different atmosphere inside too. How can we put like a little sticker on the door that says this isn't the same business that it was before. And so as they were getting ready to open, we came up with this training program and a certification program. And so the hotels have to do things like writing mission statements and training their workers and putting products in the hotel rooms, whether it's a water bottle or a thing of soap that says, we're fighting sexual exploitation and human trafficking in the hotel industry. And it's really has been a good program, and it's been a proactive thing. It's saying that these hotels are not the same hotels that they were before, and it's been a great program. We've had probably 7 or 8 hotels that have been fully certified with this. We have probably 16 other hotels who are somewhat interested in on the path to being certified. And it's just great that it's a proactive situation, that it's not something that our community is doing as a reactive situation, that we wanted to stop this problem before it became a really big problem. When we look at human trafficking worldwide, there's 46 million human trafficking victims in the world today. It's the fastest growing crime on the planet. To put that in perspective for you, the World Health Organization estimates that there's about 14 to 15 million new cases of cancer every year. So if you think of the people that that have been affected by cancer, if you triple that, that's what we have for human trafficking victims. So it is a huge problem, but nobody's talking about it. Because what happens is these people, girls, boys, men, women, transgender individuals, they're coerced, they're forced into something. They do something that they thought they would never do because they're in desperate situations. They feel like they owe somebody, or they're just simply have no other option but to do this. A lot of times we see maybe like an older boyfriend and a younger girlfriend, 15-year-old girl who's dating a 25, 26, 27-year-old guy, and what he's requesting of her really ends up to be selling her body. She doesn't get that. She's been separated from her parents because they've cut ties with her because she's dating this older guy. So she has nobody to rely on but this older guy. And he's separated her from her family, sometimes by taking her into other parts of the country. And so she feels desperate when he starts saying, you know what? You need to sell your body so that we can make ends meet this month. You need to do this or you're out on your ear. I'm going to kick you out if you don't do this. So she feels like she has no other option. It's not just something that happens to girls. It happens to boys. It happens to men. It happens to women. It happens across the board. And I use the word kid a lot because our average age of entry into human trafficking in the United States is between 12 and 14 years of age. And that statistic is so hard to say, even though I said it 100 times. But think of a 12-year-old that you know, and think of them being forced to have sex with somebody that they don't know 6, 8, 10 times a day, 7 days a week. This is a horrible life that these kids are leading, and they feel like they have no way out. They feel like they can't ask for help because they've made a decision to put themselves in there. It really isn't their decision because they're underage. They can't consent to prostitution. They should be charged for it, things like that. It really is a horrible situation, and we need to work on getting more services in our country to help these kids out, to help individuals out. And it's just, we need to, as a society, know what the signs are, know what to look for, so that we can contact law enforcement and get people the help that they need because they're not asking for themselves. And when I say that, a lot of times people look at me and say, well, if people aren't willing to help themselves, why should I do it? They say, if you are walking down the road and you see a 2-year-old kid who's wandering and there's no parents around and they look like they're going to dart into traffic, do you look at them and say, well, it's not my kid, it's not my responsibility? Or do you realize that there's a bigger societal responsibility that we all have? So when you realize that human trafficking is happening, when you know the signs of what it is, what to look for, our automatic reaction is, what can we do? And really the important thing is to know that you need to contact law enforcement. A lot of people want to go in and bust doors down and rescue these people all by themselves, but human traffickers make an average of $200,000 to $300,000 off of each one of their victims. They're not going to let these people go easy. So the important thing is that you need to keep yourself safe. You need to call in the experts. You need to get law enforcement involved. They're the ones who are trained to deal with this. And I think a lot of people have a hard time calling law enforcement and saying that, they want to report a crime because they don't know, what if I'm wrong? What if something's happening that it isn't what I think is happening? I don't want to cause any problems. I don't want to get involved, or this isn't my responsibility. This isn't my kid. And I kind of like to equate it to if you're walking down the street in your neighborhood at home and you see maybe a 2-year-old girl walking on the sidewalk. No parents around, it doesn't look like she's attached to anybody at all, and all of a sudden there comes a car along, and it looks like this girl is going to dart out in front of the car. Do you step back and say, well, it's not my kid, it's not my responsibility to stop this kid from going out into the street? Or do you realize that there's a bigger societal responsibility that we all have to stop that kid, to contact police, to make sure that this kid is safe, not only in that moment, but in the big picture? Maybe she got out of the house all by herself, but maybe it's an abusive situation that she or her parents are, on drugs or something like that, and she needs some help. She needs to get in a safer situation. So it's more than about that exact situation, it's about the bigger picture. And I don't think any of us would hesitate to help a little 2-year-old. Why would we hesitate to help a 12-year-old? Why would we hesitate to help somebody who needs our help? When we look at who the victims of human trafficking are, again, average age of entry into human trafficking in the United States is between 12 and 14 years of age. It's the kid next door. 81% of victims are U.S. citizens. We're not talking about people who've been smuggled across the border and exploited. There is a piece of that, and there is an immigrant population because they're vulnerable citizens, especially if they're undocumented. They're more likely to be vulnerable citizens or vulnerable people, but this isn't a border issue. It doesn't have to be a political issue. This is about protecting people. It's a human issue. It's all races, all genders, all socioeconomic statuses. there really is no poster child for human trafficking victims, and that's why we need to educate ourselves on the warning signs and, do what we can. So thanks for listening.